Richard,
Here.
Michael,
Here.
Glenn,
Here.
Libby, Kristen,
Here.
Eugene, all those vacant, Carly. Do you know Brooklyn already?
Not ready here.
As we know, this is a public hearing for the, and a special board meeting called tonight for the purpose of this public hearing. In accordance with Title 20A, MRSA 4102, Section 3, the school board voted to close Morse Memorial and also Walker schools at the end of the 24-25 school year, pending the town vote, which we held on December 10th, 2024. The public hearing agenda tonight will be, we open the public hearing on referendum question. We're gonna have a short presentation from the staff here at RSU3, and then we'll allow for public comment and questions after our presentation. At which point then we will close the public hearing. So I open the public hearing now. The school board determined by a 2/3 supermajority vote to close RSU3 schools in Brooks and in Liberty. The community must vote on this decision through the referendum that will be held December 10th. The municipality that sends all the students to school votes to close the school, then the school is closed. So in the case of Morse Memorial, the votes counted in Brooks are separate from the votes counted in Waldo. So if the majority of the citizens in both Brooks and Waldo vote to close, to keep the schools open, then the schools will stay open with the additional tax burden that we will go over tonight for the budget. If any one of the two towns votes to close the school, if one votes to keep it open, one votes to keep it closed by the majority, the schools will close. So both towns have to vote to keep it open. If the voters vote to keep the school open, the school remains open, and the member of the municipality will be liable for the additional expense. The students that come here now will have the option to continue to come here. So that will not be changed if the school is going to stay open. So now Barbara Van will present the information about the financials involved in the closing of the schools.
Obviously, this was not an easy decision, and there's a lot of work that goes into it.
Could you speak up, please? It's a little difficult to hear back here in the back row.
Okay.
Thank you.
Obviously, this was not an easy decision, and there were a lot of variables that got considered. My role was to calculate the finances according to the statute requirement and according to the Department of Education. So the school closure statute 1512, you'll see I've written there, refers to the votes and the liability of the additional costs that would be assessed to the towns if they vote to keep the school open, operating as a school. I'll give you a minute to read it. You also have it in your handout. Next slide. So a lot of this is based on a cost analysis. The main Department of Education requirement is that the cost to be assessed to the municipalities if they vote to keep the school open be calculated based on actual expenditures of the most recent fiscal year. So the actual costs for 2023-24 were finalized. They were uploaded to the Maine Department of Education and audited. The Maine Department of Education reviewed the actual account line details and the summary information per their standard form. So I'm gonna walk you through what some of those points are, and then in a few slides and then a few pages later, you'll see what the different columns represent. So the cost analysis summary reflects the following. You'll see column A is actual expenditures for all schools through the budget and related grants. So you'll see a large figure in column A. Column B is actual expenditures that were coded specifically for the Morse School. All of our account numbers follow the Department of Education and federal guidelines for account numbering structure. So there's a code at the end of accounts that we track all year long. 050 is Morse's code. So while that report was uploaded to the Department of Ed, it could extract all the costs that were coded specific for Morse. The next section, the next column, would be expenditures that the RSU3 administration deemed necessary for the district to continue to cover even if the school is closed. Then column D, which is mathematically you'll see representing a cost, subtracting a cost, and then a difference. Column D would represent the savings to the district if the school is closed, or thus the additional amount to be assessed to the towns if they vote to keep the schools open. The cost to keep the school open would be an additional assessment to the towns in the 2025-26 fiscal year. Although the amount you'll see is based on what the actual costs were in 23-24. This is the only way the state and the Department of Education do this. This is not what we estimate the costs would be. This is not what we might have in a budget. This is only based on actual, but it would be 2-year-old figures. So we don't bring it up to any estimated projected increase. It's actual, but 2 years old amounts. So as per the Department of Ed directions, their review and approval, the cost to be incurred by the towns for keeping the school open would be $579,094.21. Yes, my world includes pennies. Next page. Because there are multiple municipalities involved with the Morse schools, Brooks and Waldo, the statute defined that the cost to split the breakdown of that would be in alignment with the way we split for the district additional local, which is based on valuation. So I presented what Brooks' valuation is, what Waldo's is, what the total is. You'll see Brooks carries 53.46% of that combined valuation. Therefore, the assessment to Brooks would be 53.46% of the total amount that the Department of Ed approved. And Waldo's would be 46.54% of that total amount. Next slide. We were able to, in the referendum ballot that you see in December, ask the question, but indicate the split per town. So hopefully this is helpful. But when it gets to a legal ballot, it takes a second time even for me to read the question and say, what exactly am I voting and what am I answering to? So as a specimen sample ballot, the question is, do you favor authorizing the school board, original school unit number 3, to close Morse Memorial School? The second paragraph on the ballot, the official ballots, will say the additional cost of keeping the school open has been estimated by the school board original school unit number 3 to be $579,094.21. Based on section 1512 of title 20-A of the Maine revised statutes, the town of Brooks would be responsible to pay $309,583.76, and of this cost, and the town of Waldo would be responsible to pay $269,510.45 of this cost. So if the vote is no to not close it, those are the cost assessments for the towns that they would take on. If you vote yes to close it per what the school board is presenting, the school gets closed. Does that help explain explain that, just a nod. Good, all right. Good. Then the actual details would bore you. There were 75 pages of thousands of account lines. This is the format from the Department of Education in a summary. I tried to add a little more notes to explain what we're looking at. So, as I explained, this column A, which is on 3 slides, shows actual expenditures for all the students. Column B is anything that was coded with the 050 specific for Morse. And this is after, this is what we already did. This is 2023 to 24. Column C would be the district continued cost even if the school closed. And column D would be the savings to the district or the cost to the town if they vote to keep it open. So these operating costs are in categories that also follow the structure defined by the Department of Education. So to summarize it, they lumped student and staff supports, which would be guidance, which we do track per school, health, which we do not track per school, by that I mean health services or nurses. Instructional technology, this component is not tracked per school. Improvement of instruction, curriculum work, not tracked by school. Library services are tracked by school, and student assessment is not tracked by school. I make that explanation because in column B, you'll see 26,484. That's only representing Morse's share of library and guidance services. So I only have to address out of that 26,000 what the district would continue and what the town would pay if you want to keep the school open with the library and have guidance services here and mostly the library and all that. So I put a comment on the side that the town would cover the cost to keep the library ed tech position at Morse and all other library costs, but the district continues to pay for the counselor costs so that they follow the students. So you'll see 8,000 of the 26 is in the district's column. 18,000 is in the town column, or the savings, depending on how this goes. So I'm going to explain, this is the format at the way they analyze and want us to report the finances to be reviewed, assessed, and allocated. So that's the first group. The second group, the system administration, school board, superintendent, business office expenditures. None of that is coded specific for Morse. It's all district-wide, and we would continue that cost. So there's a 0 in the town column D or the savings column D. The next section here is the school administration, principal, secretary, and other costs related to school administration. For all our schools, it's 1.1 million. Specific for Morse was 94,000. The district would continue to cover 30,000 of that, but not 63,000, because the town would cover the cost if they voted to keep the school open and operating, to keep a school secretary, to keep a partial dean of students that's split, funding for after-school supervision while students stay here, and travel and supplies. But the district continues to pay for the principal portion because that support would follow the students. The next category is school facilities, operations, and maintenance. Out of a 2.5 expense for the entire district, 148,000 was specifically coded for Morse. Out of the 148,000, the district's intent is not to continue those costs if the school is closed. So therefore, the towns would cover the building costs to continue operating as a school. Now there are other costs that we cover as maintenance that are not specifically coded for Morse. They're kind of district-wide. We build a budget, we order parts for every school. There are things that were not included in that because we didn't do the extra work to say, oh, this was specific to Morse and this amount. We went strictly by what was coded and expensed as Morse in there. The next category is transportation, which is 1.8 million for the district, and you'll see in column D, we have a 0. The transportation costs, they're not coded specific to Morse. We don't break out our transportation cost specific to any school. It's a district-wide code, and the district will continue to cover those costs. The next one says all other expenses. Part of that is the school lunch program, the school nutrition program, because it's not just lunch, and transfers and other grants that are related here. So out of that whole category, there was $3 million spent. 163,000 was coded for Morse. Of that, the district would continue to cover 92,000, but not 71,000. In that, the category includes, school nutrition program, the grant-funded expenditures. The district would continue to pay for, we have part-time instruction interventionists. We would continue to pay for those. We had a part-time counselor under the grant as we got that. We would continue to pay that. So, and then there were food costs that would follow the students. So out of that, there's a partial in the district continuing column and a partial in the savings or the town cost. The next section is debt service. That article is not specific to any more school expenditures, so there's nothing added in the assessment for that. The next one is regular instruction, elementary and secondary, all together for 6.5 million, of which 587,000 was coded for Morse. Of that, the district would continue the cost for 3.7 teachers, for software licenses, part of the supplies and technologies, but the towns would cover the difference. Now, you may be considering your classroom teachers, and so I'm just going to mention that financially speaking, in accounting, positions, and payroll, we have a number of teachers who split their time between schools. So therefore, when I isolate a school, I have a partial of a full-time teacher. So I have full-time classroom teachers, but I have 5 different itinerant teachers that serve the school. So they may range from a 0.2 on one school, 0.4, 0.15. So I don't mean that we'll have a 0.7 of a person somewhere, somewhere not. That's where it comes to that fractional kind of teaching position. Next page. Special education resources, resource program is self-contained. The overall district cost was 2.7. Specific to Morse was 65,000. Of that, the district would continue almost all of it because the district wants to continue the cost for special ed staff. But the towns would cover the cost that we pay teachers to travel between schools. So when we have a special education teacher who has to serve 4 schools, some of that time she's going between schools and she's entitled to a mileage reimbursement. So there we have that small cost. If the school is closed, we don't incur that cost. We not only don't incur the cost, it provides the teacher has more time to support the students. So that's why that cost is very small, and we will support the students with our special ed staff for that. We have no relative CTE, other instructional, which would be co-curricular and extracurricular, which is athletics. Nothing is specifically for Morse, so therefore there's nothing assessed in either of those columns. That being said, all of that came to a calculation of the cost to be incurred by the member municipality for keeping the school open, $579,094.21. This was done to the best of my ability with a lot of details and direction of the Department of Education. It was reviewed by them. I just tried to add what each column means and some notes to explain it. So that's where we're at now. And then the next slide, I think, should just be the ballot.
Thank you, Barbara.
Well, I'm just going to explain that we have a few additional things that we want to talk about, just briefly. And we have a variety of people who are just going to cover these few things, starting with Paul.
So this is also provided to the DOE.
Can you speak up, please,
Yeah,
everybody?
this is also provided to the DOE as well. Information to show declining enrollment in our district. And so we just obviously want to make sure that we are using accurate numbers and counting, using NEO and the documentation that's out there. So again, we only went, this was based on the Wandell consultant that was happening in this district in 2016 and 17. I know it's projections, so they're not really accurate. They do look at birth rates. You can read, there's a whole report on it, on what they're doing. But if you look at that report, the thing we're highlighting is the current year we're in. The current students, like they projected at that point in time, 548, with birth projections and everything else that they take into account in these studies. They're very common studies, usually good for like 10 years. And so there's a current enrollment. I just wanted to share the information that we shared with the state, that as of this current student number that they projected, as of October 24, there's a 72 student difference already, reduction of that. So the numbers, again, they're projections, so they do the best they can with the information that they have at the time. But it supports the idea that the enrollment is decreasing, not increasing at this point in time.
So our current enrollment, our class configurations at Walker, we have 2 classroom teachers. We have one who supports grades K through 2, and we have a second who does grades 3 through 5. Here at Morse, we have 5 classroom teachers. We have a K1, we have a 1-2, we have a straight 3, a 3-4, and a 5. That's what we have for classroom teachers.
You can see total enrollment on there. Just
sorry.
That out with 23 students at Walker. That's minus the 8 pre-K and 15 who requested in-district transfers to Mount View. And 70 at Morse, which is subtract 16 that would be in pre-K, and 13 in-district transfers to Mount View.
What you're seeing here is the Mount View Elementary enrollment and classroom configurations for this year, 24-25. We have 36 kindergarteners, 36 first graders, 53 second graders, that's about 40 third graders, 39 fourth graders, and 46 fifth graders. This is a total of 250 students and 13 classroom teachers. If current Morse and Liberty students come to Mount View, we anticipate approximately 36 kindergarteners, 46 first graders, 51 second, 63 third, 62 fourth, and 55 fifth graders, which would be a total of 313 students from the 250 and 18 classroom teachers, because we have 3 teachers for each grade, K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Obviously, that's subject to change depending on the actual enrollment. So, but that's as close as we could come up with.
I'm just going to share real quick, Alicia, in case anyone's wondering, kindergarten is always an unknown, but what I did there is I went back the last 5 years, took the average, and on average we have about 36 kids in kindergarten. So, perfect. Just in case you're wondering where that came from.
So based on the current and predicted enrollment data, the average class size at Mount View Elementary School next year would be 17.3 students per class. And the average right now is 19.5. So it actually, with the additional teachers, would be overall, on average, a smaller class size. The classroom structure would most likely consist of those 3 classrooms for each grade level that I spoke of, and this allows for multiple grade level classrooms with the appropriate cohort age group, as opposed to having widespread multi-age groups, multi-age classrooms. It also allows for increased professional and collegial growth opportunities for staff, less travel between schools, allowing for more centralized resources and direct attention to students, and more opportunity for after-school programming just based on the increased number of staff available to support in a larger school. As far as where the classrooms are located when we do this consolidation, there is plenty of space to absorb the additional students from Morse and Walker. Based on the original complex design, allowing for annual classroom reorganization based on grade level enrollments, because those vary, the first classrooms on both the first floor and the second floor, as you enter the middle school wing, will be utilized for necessary elementary classrooms. There are currently 4 of those classrooms already in use for elementary instructional classrooms, as they've been historically whenever needed since the complex was constructed. Additionally, there are also several classrooms throughout the middle school that are not currently being utilized as classroom instructional space, but will be as needed, to allow for rooms closest to the elementary wing to go back to being elementary classrooms. As is true of every school year, adjustments will be made and decisions made by staff and administration to best utilize available space and ensure students are appropriately placed in our building.
For the special education piece, currently between Walker and Morse, we have 14 students that currently have IEPs, 3 at Walker and 11 at Morse. All student needs will continue to be met utilizing our existing staff and resources, with the added benefit of less time travel between schools and more time to support direct instruction for students, as well as for our service providers to have consultation with staff members.
Evening, folks. If you don't know who I am, I'm Pete Quimby. I help with the operations, so it's facilities, transportation, and IT. So put a couple slides together, kind of talk about what the goals are in transportation. Yes, we have a big district, one of the biggest ones in the state. So we're always challenged with load and time. So FY26, our goal will be to get a bus to traffic back up through Brooks 139 towards Monroe. Loads, we want to stay under 77, that's a full capacity of a bus, that's heavy. And then student ridership, we really want to stay under that hour. That's our goal. Currently, right now, 84% of our students they have a bus schedule. Why that's important is you want to kind of look at an average. So over the last 6 years, it's been about 80 to 85% of our students that are hooked to a bus route. So on average, it's about 55 students per bus. That's got a little addition in there. We do drop off some at the outside schools, Monroe, Troy, and here as well. So if 100% of our students rode a bus, which the seniors like to drive, basically that's 65 students per bus. Last spring, we did a little exercise kind of looking at each student. We put this together. It's just a snapshot. This is online too, if you want to see it in the consolidation folder. But down at the bottom, we've got about 84% of our students that are riding in that hour or less. So we've got work to do, right? We've got a big district. Our challenge is really to get these kids to school as soon as possible. So kind of the next steps, if we are to consolidate, moving forward, FY26. So what have we done? Well, we met with drivers back in April and the spring, kind of, we call them pods of areas. So the Brooks Waldo area and then the Liberty area. We kind of roughed in all the rooms, so we have different scenarios built for depending on what we do moving forward. We have verified loads, we've verified the times. So really our next step is just to finalize, really meet with the drivers and kind of smooth out everything for future state.
I will take questions and comments from the public.
Yeah, I have a question, I think that may go to Barbara's presentation, maybe beyond that. I noted that there are 3.2 classroom teachers that I would say are going to be laid off, defunded, put into mothballs, I don't know what it is. And there are also 2.2 on Liberty's chat that are going to be defunded as well. Are those positions being eliminated? Or are they being moved to the complex? Or can you elucidate me on what exactly the status of these positions will be after consolidation?
Some of those positions will be eliminated. Yes, we will not need as many teachers as we currently have. That doesn't necessarily mean people will lose their jobs, because through attrition, we oftentimes are looking for teachers every year. But yes, some of the positions will be.
You're telling me that you're going to eliminate 5.4 positions in 2 schools, and you're basing the savings, i.e. the cost to the town, on the elimination of those positions, and now you're telling me only some of them will be eliminated.
It goes to the itinerants as well, so all the staffing positions, and what she means is because through it, what you're intimating is the fact that some people are going to lose their jobs, and what she's trying to clarify is the fact that we have so much transition in our district, more than likely they won't lose their jobs because somebody else will leave and they'll replace somebody. But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, if the schools do close, we only need to bring 5 teachers forward.
Yeah, I'm not intimating
And
about
then
anybody.
there's the itinerants, who also the whole nother mishmash of your phys ed, your arts, and all those other parts and pieces. So these positions, that's what we're projecting, that we will be eliminating from costs.
I'm not intimating that anybody's gonna lose their jobs. What I'm saying is that you're saying that you're asking the towns to pick up, you're asking Brooks and Waldo to pick up $276,000 for 3.2 positions that I presume are gonna be savings, i.e. you won't be paying anybody for those. And I guess I can't see where those 3.2 positions are going to be eliminated. I mean, if you're going to move the itinerants, if the itinerants are part of that number, if you're gonna move the itinerants to the complex, then it's not a savings. It's not something the town should be paying for. It should be out of that equation.
That amount is if the school stays open, we will be maintaining those positions. If the school closed, those positions will be eliminated. So therefore, since the board voted to close the school, and if the towns vote to keep the school open, the cost of those positions are back on the town.
But I don't think we're connecting here. You're asking the towns to pay for positions that are going to be eliminated if you're not going to eliminate them. If you can't show me what positions are going to be eliminated, let me give you an example. If you look at the 8.1 ED 279, it says there were 23.12 positions in classes 1 through 5 district-wide. 7 of those positions teaching in Monroe or Troy. So if you take 7 out, you're down to 16. If you take 5.2 out, you're down to 10 or 11. And that increases your class load for a lot higher than what Felicia is implying. So either I'm crazy, which is a possibility, or these numbers just, they don't seem to line up for me.
well, I mean, the way I look at it is, right now, we have 8 classroom teachers between the two schools. We do not need 8, and that's just regular classroom teachers. That's not even taking into account the itinerants, which is where we get the point, this and that. We would not need to take 8 teachers. We would only need to take 5 teachers. So just regular teachers right there, if you looked at it that way, that's 3 right there. But again, that doesn't take into account itinerants, and that's how we get into the funky point, this and that. I'm sorry, Ray, I don't think I'm understanding.
I don't know where you're getting the 23 from, because I have 13 classroom teachers on my own. And then there's 8 here, and all the schools, it's way more than, maybe that's what the ED 279,
It's what the ED 279
but it might be
says.
that's what they pay for, Ray. Okay? Like, in other words, there's an ideal on the ED 279, and they'll say, okay, for every, 23 kids, we'll pay for 1 classroom teacher. For every 400 students, these are examples, I'm just giving you an example. You'd pay for 1 counselor, you know what I mean? And then if we have more than that, we eat that cost. Does that make sense? We don't only have 23 teachers.
I want to know how many positions there are at RSU3 for classroom teachers before consolidation, and how many positions remain after consolidation. That would seem to be a reasonably simple mathematics problem.
I just want to point out on the ED 279, the 23 figure, 23, you're looking at grade 1 to 5.
Correct?
That's 23.12. The kindergarten is in a different column. They're 7.57. That's what the allocation of the Department of Ed EPS would be. The line says kindergarten, pre-K kindergarten, 1 through 5, grades 6 through 8, then 9 through 12. All of that says we should have 62.82 teachers. The next column says we actually have 84.6. So
Okay.
one is their ratio allocation, and the actual column is what we have reported in our staff into the state data.
So the actual column is 84.6 positions. And
But
so,
at that point, it's all lumped together.
right, but after these eliminations, you'll have 84.6 minus 5.4, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So when I pull this up in 6 months, in June, July, for the next, the post-consolidation numbers, this is going to be less than it is now.
Just keep in mind, we're in the FY25 fiscal year, so the ED 279 subsidy sheet for FY25 is using, remember this came out a few months ago, so that was using our October staff count from the prior year. It's never gonna be current because it's coming out before we're in our current year. So if you're looking for a reduction in that, you won't see it immediately, okay?
But if we asked you to follow up on this and tell us how many positions you have today, you know that number.
I counted what I
Somebody
saw
knows that number,
in
right?
positions for this school.
For this school.
Yeah, I'd have to go do some more legwork to count every FTE, full-time equivalent for the entire district. I don't have that in front of me right now. Not the entire district.
Okay, more questions? Stephanie?
So, what is the 3.2 teachers that are cut, the full-time positions? How, is it, because you said it's a mix of classroom teachers and itinerants? What are the positions? Like, would PE go to halftime, and, like, how do you get the 3.2?
So, well, I mean, we don't have all the specifics yet.
Who?
Like, we can't say who, like, I wouldn't necessarily say right now, PE is cut, music is cut, like, that's something they have to figure out. I mean, classroom teachers, it's a little clearer because we know we only need to send 5 versus the 8 that we have. Then we have to go into the sort of nitty gritty with the itinerants and how that's gonna play out, where we need them, what that's gonna look like.
Okay, so,
But you're looking at your itinerant population, right, because we know our classroom teachers, so it's the itinerant that would be, we'd have to readjust based on what the votes are in this community, the other communities, right? As we go through that, do you need full PE? We didn't want to get specific because we don't really know those numbers until the vote. And then we'll know, but it is you're looking at your itinerant positions.
okay. So, but how do you get the 3.2? Like, what's the actual, what makes the 3.2?
Sorry, can you explain that a little bit again?
The point
What is
two,
the point
is
two?
itinerant stuff.
No, I do understand that, like, you have to prorate an itinerant schedule or any teacher who travels between the schools, but just how did you get 3.2? When you say that we're cutting 3.2 positions, like, what is that?
I'm trying, I mean, I've worked with the figure, I'm trying to remember how we came up with what the partials would be. I have a feeling that in reality, they know they wanted to keep 3 teachers. We actually put that to 3.7 because we didn't know how the itinerants would play out. If we get there, it might have actually been higher on the town side and less on the district side. So we would have to review whether somebody's a 0.15, a 0.2, a 0.25. I don't have that breakdown in front of me.
I was just thinking if the town did vote to keep the school open and we were going to fund, just say we voted to keep the school open, we're going to fund it. If you think about like an itinerant's position, they work here 1 day a week. Would it still be, like how would you know what I mean? Like how do you figure out how much that the town would be responsible
If the
for?
school remains open,
Yep.
then all those teaching positions, including itinerants, would stay as they are.
Even if Walker closed, we would stay open. You would.
They have a cost to bear or savings. It would not affect Morse's.
You know, those are 2 separate votes between this school and the Liberty School.
Oh, I know that. I guess when we, I'm not great with math, but when you think of a full-time position, say an itinerant full-time position, and they're cut between 4 schools, in theory, if 2 schools closed, they would go to half-time, like that was what would be funded, like Monroe and Troy. But what if Walker closed and Morse stayed open? Would they still?
They work 3 schools then.
3 schools. Okay.
And, I mean, the district is in so many unknowns right now until December 10th. So it's very hard to say exactly how it's going to pan out.
Well, it's not gonna be more than that. It's not
No.
gonna be increased, right?
This is, we will not change the figure that we're giving you now.
It's gonna be at least
It
that.
will stay that. That's legally, that's been approved by the RSU3, it's been approved by the DOE, and it's been approved by the selectmen here.
Additional cost is there.
So, and we already know we will have additional costs that we have to bear because these numbers are based on the 23-24 school year. We're in the 24-25 school year with pay raises. And next year will be the 25-26 school year with those pay raises. So we will be bearing, if the schools stay open, the district is bearing a lot larger figure than this one that will be 2 years old. And so that means all 11 towns will continue to support keeping the school open on the extra cost over what it cost in 23-24. So that's an important thing to realize is the numbers that the DOE took was what we already have in the system. We have to upload information into the DOE system. And those numbers were there for the 23-24 year, because we're now in the 24-25, so the numbers aren't uploaded yet. Let me go to see if somebody else has a question, go back to you. Is there anybody else who has a question?
My turn? I think a lot of concern is small communities, get attached to their teachers. Can you guesstimate me how many teachers retired or went to a different district and you had to fill those positions this year? So there's not such a fear of the people that we love that are in these small schools are going to lose their job.
Sure. What would you say, how many did you hire?
I'm thinking it's 4 or 5
And
this
you
year.
have-
I heard 2 this year.
So a half a dozen right there.
That left on their own accord.
Right,
Yeah.
it depends on year to year.
We struggled to fill positions.
Yes? Yeah.
My question is regarding the transportation. When our kids moved from Morse to Mount View, they were about the first on and the last off, and spent quite a bit more than an hour on the bus. And when we say an hour, it's hour each way, correct?
Yes.
And so I'm just wondering how you're going to manage to pick up kids and do it within an hour with a single, with a single bus route.
Okay, I'll let Pete address that, but can I say one thing first? Looking at the district, right now we're on a single bus run. So the elementary kids and the high school kids are all picked up at the same time. So sometimes for a while, the high school kids are actually heading towards Morse and going around, picking up all the elementary and the high school kids, dropping them off at Morse, and then coming back to the complex. So Pete can elucidate more on that fact, but that's the advantage is Pete can start at the furthest reaches and just keep going forward, picking up the elementary and the high school kids.
So to answer your question, we did a little presentation in the spring. Consolidation, school closure really doesn't have anything to do with that question. We have what we call a lot of finger roads in our district. The roads that you basically go down and have to come out. Those consume a lot of time on a bus. We do have a policy designated stops. We're actually doing an exercise right now to really kind of look at our district. Our district has a lot of needs as far as families needing those buses. So there's only a couple ways to help with that hour, right? You add more routes, or you look at designated stops, which have a lot of fruit in them. But again, now you're offsetting people having to meet you there, maybe some walking distances. So we're putting that exercise together right now to kind of present to the board. They're tough. Rural Maine is tough in the busing world. You might travel a half an hour going from the complex down to Fishtown Road, and you don't get a lot of kids. So you want to utilize the buses as best you can, but also keep your ridership time down. That help answer?
Yeah, it keeps it as vague as I thought it is right now.
Yeah.
The other concern is having kindergartners and first graders spending an hour on the bus with high schoolers. You minimize their mixing in the school complex, but not on the bus where you have one person whose focus is on staying on the road, not on what's happening behind them. So,
If I could respond to that?
sure.
Do you mind? So, historically, if you are a special needs student, you've been placed at the complex quite often. And so those kids have already been doing that. This year we have 16 pre-K students from both, we took the pre-K from both Brooks and Walker, and they're coming off that bus full of energy and pretty much unscathed. I think kids are very resilient, and honestly, a lot of them have been doing it for years, there's already a very mixed population at Mount View from all the other towns.
I'm Cindy Ludman, bus driver for RSU3. I have a little special needs fellow who gets on at 10 minutes to 7, gets off at 10 minutes past 8. If we're not coming here, his ride just went a lot shorter.
So to answer your question, we do assigned seating, and we keep our little ones up front. Middle school, we call it between the red handles, and then high school in the back. We do have a few monitors that we rotate from time to time to help with any behaviors and stuff. You're absolutely right. You're driving, that 20,000-pound vehicle down the road, trying to pay attention, and you got a bunch of little ones on there. It's not easy some days, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I haven't heard you say that there's going to be a new line drawn for like Summer Brooks and Jackson kids that will be going to Monroe, not necessarily going to Mount View though.
Yeah, so you're talking about basically boundary lines. That's always been tough. I've always asked that. We have, for a good example, buses that travel Route 9 from Troy to Unity Complex. So sometimes, depending on if there's more capacity to the school, that parent is right on that line, and we kind of have that choice. But for the most part, it was always developed around the bus routes. Like, we're coming through an area, sorry, this is the school you're going to. Hence why one of the goals is to get a bus back up 139 heading towards Monroe, so that we have that option, especially on 139, to get kids to Monroe.
I had a question. I don't know if I got this right. So the vote for Morse and Walker is separate, correct? So the majority of the people in Brooks want Morse open, it will stay open regardless of the vote for Walker.
That's correct, but Waldo has to also vote to keep it open.
Okay, right, Waldo and Brooks.
Yes.
Okay, okay, I just wanted to be clear about that. Well, I'm opposed to the consolidation. I'm not gonna get into why. It's obvious reasons. Small community. I did want to mention the enrollment factor. I think enrollment fluctuates so much. When my kids came to Morse many years ago, the enrollment was really small. But then there was this huge influx of back to the Landers, and the enrollment just, sprung right up.
Lesha, thank you. We're going to stay on.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but I was sort of touching base on the enrollment factor,
Yeah.
that really does fluctuate.
Yeah, there's
So-
more things in enrollment though that we're considering. Yes, sir.
Not my current student, but I want to address some concerns that have been brought up in the past about kids running over the kids. And my previous kids that I know who've ridden the bus, including my own, have actually been harassed more by people in their own peer group and age group than anything from upper age groups back and forth. So I can say 2 of my kids have been severely harassed on the bus by kids in their own age group, and still think about it to this day. So people who are concerned more about the high schoolers harassing little kids, you should think about kids in their own age group, and that's really more where it comes from.
Which happens more over the course of an hour bus ride than a 5-minute trip to Morse.
Carpooling, people can go range carpooling.
Okay, Ashley, that's.
Yeah, my question is for Lisa. Would the interventionists that are currently,
Can't hear you.
the interventionists that are at the schools now that are helping with reading and math, would they be following the kids to the complex so that they would get those services at the complex as well? Or would they be using the interventionists at the complex?
So sort of both. The interventionists are still in the budget. It'll depend on where the need is the greatest, and so. But we'll have more opportunity, I guess we could say, so we can support more kids.
Okay. My second question was, so we're a lot of people I've heard. People in Brooks are kind of fixated on this amount, this 309,583.76. But you're telling us that will very likely more this spring because the cost of business goes up, and this is an old figure. So if we're thinking about a half mil jump by keeping the school open, it could be more than that.
But not to the separate towns, only to the entire entire district. So this amount is what the towns will pay per the referendum.
Okay.
And all 11 towns will pick up the rest of the budget.
But the Brooks mill rate would go up because of the school being open, should it vote that way?
Yes, yeah, but Brooks will be paying this $300-some thousand.
Right, and that would go up every year that the school stayed open with the cost of business. So the mill rate would go up.
Progress each year. The base year will become 1 year beyond. The base year is 23, 24, will become 24, 25, and it continues on.
Okay.
The town will get the chance to vote again next year. If they want to, if the towns vote to keep the school open, the towns get to vote again the following year with the latest figures, which will still be 2 years old, but it will still be, there'll be a new budget amount. So I want to make that clear, that should you vote to keep the school open, the board has voted to close it, the towns must vote to keep it open on an annual basis. I'm gonna go to, oh, wait a minute, you already spoke, I'm gonna ask Libby again, I'm sorry.
So, if something unexpected happens with the building, since the town has voted for a specific amount of money, would the district absorb, like, if something happened to a roof or something happened to something, would the district absorb that?
That's my understanding. If the furnace goes up, this is the only amount they're liable for, in addition to their regular amount that the budget will be at the hearing in, where are we at, next May. Yeah, so the district will pick up the cost of a new heater, a new roof, or new septic.
But ultimately, it comes back to taxpayers and impacting that anyhow, right? So it's
Right.
coming up to.
We all pay for it anyway.
Fine, you're gonna, right, it doesn't escape the taxpayer. What we're trying to do here is how do we become fiscally responsible, or more responsible, and move in that direction, to avoid those impacts to the budget and to the local taxpayers. That's what this is about.
Okay, back there.
David, Ellie, I don't know if I missed the meeting, but where this happened, and this might not be the right venue, but I appreciate all the numbers, but I've yet to understand why Morse was selected. I've seen numbers where it's got the highest enrollment of any of the 4 elementary schools. I've been told, and I didn't verify, sorry, that it has the highest MEA scores of any of the elementary schools. Mountain has higher enrollment.
Because this is about the referendum now, not about why we closed.
Well, I think it's important to know. I mean, if we're voting to, as townsmen and taxpayers and folks, why we're being asked if we want to keep this institution here that was gifted to the district as a school in the first place, why this school was selected when, you know, there are outlying schools, and there's history of even Morse School coming here for a number of years, Monroe School coming here for a number of years. Well, they were having construction in the 90s, so we know that there's capacity here with the building as it was, even at that time.
Yes, there's information on the website, and I'll be happy to talk to you later about those reasonings. We've gone through that, and we're now to the point of what's the referendum about, so thank you.
Well, I don't understand why you can't address that, though. I think Elizabeth makes a really good
I mean,
point.
it's definitely
We are
my first
voting on
meeting.
this. I mean, isn't
Lesha, this is a hearing on the budget, not a meeting about why we kept the school open or closed. We've been down that street, and I'd rather not entertain that now. I'll be happy to talk to you later about it, but I would like to keep this focused on hearing about the referendum. Yes?
Regarding the cost that the town would take on, Waldo and Brooks would take on if they chose to keep the school open. Currently, Waldo and Brooks are paying X amount into the SAD3 budget, correct?
Yes.
This amount that you've identified would be in addition to what we're currently paying?
Yes, it'd be X plus Y.
So we're currently paying for more school. We would continue to pay for more school through the SAD3 budget, and we would be paying more school as well. So you'd be getting paid twice for those expenses. I don't see anything coming out of what we're paying the district if we're taking over some of these costs.
So I'm gonna say no to that question. I'll let the superintendent speak more directly about it.
Sure.
But, you know, if we vote to keep the school open,
Yep.
that amount is taken out of the budget, so you don't, the other
Other
towns don't pick up that part.
And there'll be an allocation, right, there'll be a distribution, there'll be a budget, and then that'll be added back on for your local communities only, not to be, the unity's not paying for that.
Right.
It's extracted out to be a flat budget amount, right, and then that'll be above the others, you're not gonna get it twice, we're not taxing you twice.
Okay, so our portion of the SAD3 budget would be decreased by that amount, and then we would pay it separately for those costs?
Not necessarily decrease, no.
I mean, that's the idea, but you
It's
gotta
a
keep in mind that
process.
this is 2 years old, these figures are 2 years old by
Right.
state law.
Yeah.
And so, all 11 towns will have to pick up the extra amount that oil costs and gas costs and,
No, I understand that, and our allotment would go up, you know, it goes up year after year
Yes.
because of those things. But if we're taking on expenses for Morse in particular, shouldn't those costs come out of what we're paying you already to pay those
Because you
expenses?
still have to, be part of the RSU, you still have to contribute to the district and the general, the cost of the general budget.
Yeah, I'm not saying we shouldn't
So
pay
the
anything,
school
I'm
is
just
separate
saying,
from that.
this will be taken out of the general
Take out
budget,
the general
yes.
budget, and then it'll be put back in on, for you to continue to run that, right?
Yeah.
So the other communities aren't gonna pay for you running your school, only this community would pay for, Waldo would pay for running the school. So it's not doubling up on that.
so that X amount wouldn't go down for everybody? I mean,
That's really hard to tell, but yes, Barb can address that.
I haven't been there yet in my career experience, but from what I understand, we will build the budget, the district will build the budget for FY '26. If the towns vote to keep the school open, we will build that full cost. Then we take the full cost and we subtract the subsidy that we get. We subtract any other revenues. Then there is an amount, it's called the additional local only. Out of that, I will subtract the part that Morse would, Brooks would pay, and Waldo would pay, and whatever Walker, Liberty and Walker. And I subtract that off from the assessment to the towns. I'm gonna take the balance and calculate it on all 11 towns.
Yep.
But then, in addition to that partial amount that Brooks has assessed, we'll get the additional 300,000.
Yep.
So it stays within the whole budget. So what Ellie's saying is that while we would assess 579,000 to keep it open, if I were to earmark all the costs in the budget, they would be higher than 579. Because that's the way the process
I understand
works.
that, I just wanted to know whether any of that 500,000 we would be paying would be taken out of our assessment for the SAD3 budget, because if it's not,
The best I can explain.
then we're paying twice for some things.
You pay twice, because that amount is taken out of the budget for all 11 towns.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Yeah, it's
Thank
taken
you.
out for all 11 towns. Raymond?
Yes. I'd just like to say, from Brooks's standpoint, the number, if the $309,000 is approved, it will represent a 3.3 mil increase in the taxes of every property owner in the town of Brooks. That's 16% of an increase. And that's significant, and it competes against all the things that we need to do to keep our roads up and keep them plowed so PETA can come down and pick the kids up in the bus. I'm not leaving here with a real warm and fuzzy feeling in my belly that you folks have got your arms around the $276,000. We've got to go to the vote and get the town to approve 3.2 FTEs, and I'm not comfortable that I've heard that everybody's arms are around that. So, and I have one other question, you may not want to answer it, but this is relating to Liberty and tomorrow night's meeting. As I read Liberty's summary sheet, the initial cost to Liberty was $457,000 to keep their school open, but apparently there was an oversight of a $76,000 remote school grant that the district was getting for Liberty. Am I reading that right? Was the
It's
district
not a
getting?
grant, it's, the DOE provides extra funding for remote schools. And so the $76,000 was what was provided to them in 2023. This year, it's down to what, 36,000?
In FY '24, the isolated small school adjustment was 76,416. It's already gone down for FY '25 to 58,000 and change.
Does it continue to go down, or does it vary depending on economic conditions, or?
There are factors that the Department of Ed calculates on how many students are enrolled per grade, as well as the distance to the other schools. But
Whatever the number is, it's additional revenue that we're giving up by closing what?
say that again?
Whatever the number is, it's an additional source of revenue that we've given up or will give up when we close water.
Well, if this school is closed, Monroe will become an isolated small school.
Depending on the enrollment per grade.
There's several factors to get it.
It is applicable to the Liberty Walker picture though. It's on their cost summary.
This works a lot better when all 11 towns work together, stay as a district, and share the costs the way that they've been sharing them since 1965. That's my final comment.
Thank you. Okay, there's more hands on top. Oh, Wayne?
Wayne Marshall, Waldo. I'm speaking as an individual, not on behalf of Waldo. First thing I'd note is that in looking at enrollments, only 71 of the 98 students who came to this school were from Waldo or Brooks. So it seems a little bit off base to me that only those two towns are the ones who would have to carry the weight of keeping this school open. I would note that essentially all of the students from Jackson came to this school. But Jackson is not being asked the same question that's being asked of Waldo and Brooks. And that's coming from the district's January 2024 enrollments. I would note that 8 of the students were not from either of those 3 towns. 4 were from Troy. We had 2 from Montville, 2 from Monroe, and 1 from Knox.
Wayne, what's your point on that then?
January 2024, I used the same enrollment report that the district put up for the consolidation effort.
But you know that it's the law that only the towns that send 100% of their kids to the school may vote. We actually had one person from Jackson come to a meeting and said they'll go to their selectmen and ask for some money from Jackson to help cover their kids who come here.
First question. Second, and I'm going to pick up what Ray said about the impact on Waldo taxpayers. To date, the Waldo taxpayers are contributing $2,283,042 to the district. That's their share. This would raise the cost, and that's 62% of the Waldo tax bill. What's being asked now is equal to about 28% of what Waldo as a town spends on delivering municipal services to all its residents. It spends $990,000 a year to deliver municipal services, and now it's being asked to come up with another $269 to support potentially the school. And looking at that, the other thing I note is that the district basically operates with portability. This school, if it remained open, would be part of the district. So to date, as I noted, some students from Troy, students from Jackson, students from Montville, and others come to the school. But in the future, next year, if by some chance Waldo and Brooks taxpayers reach deeply into their pockets to keep this school open at significant cost to them, will the district then still have the option of having students come to this school? And if so, is that fair to the Waldo and Brooks taxpayers, where they're not paying the type of assessment that's being asked of the folks in this room and the folks in Waldo? But I'm going to assume that there's reportability, that if I live in Jackson down the road, that if I wanted to have my child come here, that would be something that would be possible, because this is a district school. But something just, I'm asking the board to think about it. The fourth thing I'd say is that the state system is really unfair. What this district and the taxpayers are being asked to do is to take a vote this year, deep into their pockets, to keep the school open for 1 year. Next year, the carousel will start again. Are you willing to reach into your pocket a second time to keep it open? So what I'm asking the board to consider, and the administration, is that if, again, by some chance, Waldo and Brooks both vote to pay the cost, pretty much numerical, in my opinion, because Ray noted it's 3.3 mils, it's a little over 3 mils of Waldo. Will the board take an active engagement of reaching out to these communities and say, this school is important to us, and to try and see if there are options other than to just shut it down? Because these folks will have done something that no other school, no other community in this district has done. They paid an extra assessment to keep their school open. So that's a request and a question being tossed out for looking to the future. Or is it just put it on the ballot next year, let's put the figure out again, and let's see how much more these taxpayers are going to step up and pay the bill? And my fifth one is something I only thought of about 2 minutes ago. My recollection is Morse has about 50 students. Troy has about 50 students. 47 students from Brooks came to this school last year from the January report. Is there an option to go with a Brooks only option if Waldo says no? And to look at where the numbers would be, cranking them out again, to saying what would it take to operate this school at the same type of levels that it obviously must be operating Troy and Morse, because the student enrollment would be basically the same.
More questions? One last question in the back.
I'll stand in hopes that you can hear me. And what I found were about the second largest district in the state, which means a lot of busing. And we do not have a busing cost for next year. I would think we should be able to do that without, because we know where all these kids live, except for the new ones coming on. And as I harp every time, it's about the children. That over 50% of the kids here in Brooks are dropped off by a parent, grandparent, not family member. Meaning they don't want even the shorter bus ride that they are enduring now, or they don't want to be on the bus. I don't blame them. But right now, from Moosehead Trail in Waldo, to get to Mount View, it would be 1 hour and 22 minutes if this 24-25 thing is actual, that we got off the internet. And if the school is closed, there will be more kids getting on the bus, so there will be more stops. So there will be more little ones on the bus longer. And I want to ask you directors, would you put your kids on the bus for an hour and 30 minutes or an hour and 22 minutes, twice a day, 5 days a week, to try to get some kind of illness or to get a limited vocabulary? Because you can sit the kids in the back, the big ones, but they still speak. And the cost to the parents that do attempt to get them to Mount View is going to be far greater if they feel they can, to even financially do.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, we've addressed some of those issues that you just now brought up.
But you haven't given us a bus run for next year, no, apparently.
We told you that it's one single bus run, so we are not assessing the town's additional money. And that's what I keep hearing is you want to see more money from the towns to cover a bus cost that doesn't exist.
No, I'm just asking if it increases, can that be taken out of the overall cost? I mean, we haven't gotten any savings, or we're getting less savings if we're doing more busing. There will be less
We didn't
savings.
add any bus costs in, so there's nothing to take out.
If the bus,
There will not be, the
they're
bus.
gonna go on the exact same routes they're on now, they won't make any
No, he said
extra
he's
stop.
gonna redo the routes.
Okay. We're talking by each other, and I don't have enough voice.
All right.
Sorry.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Albee.
You have voice.
I know, it's so nice to be loud, and I'm not a teacher, but I'm gonna use my teacher voice. And I love spreadsheets, and I love percentages. If I'm looking at these numbers correctly, if Brooks decides to keep our school open next year, roughly 25% of our costs will be the physical property. That's what I'm reading here. And 75% will be people power and teachers and resources. I think that's what I'm reading, if I'm reading these spreadsheets correctly. And I think that's a helpful indicator when we think about what we may or may not incur in terms of costs with the physical building, which the town and now the district owns and is a part of. So really our costs going forward would be for instruction and people. Is that what I'm reading? That the facility itself is not the issue. Is that correct?
The issue for what?
In terms of cost savings, that the building is not the issue.
Always the biggest part of the budget, yes, is the instructors, the bus drivers, the whole people thing.
Right.
The staff.
Okay, that's very helpful for me to recognize this school as a physical asset to the town. All right, thank you.
All right, Stephanie, got something new?
Will the dean of students position, will that be eliminated if both if Walker and Morse both close? You're welcome. Okay.
What did you add?
You're welcome.
Yeah, we wouldn't need the dean of
Okay.
students if we only have two schools.
Yep.
One principal for two schools, as we've had for many years, is adequate.
Will any of the itinerants follow the students to Mount View? Or is that all covered already with the itinerants you have there?
No, some would need to follow.
So you need again, I know you don't want to get into specific roles.
Like, for example, the garden teacher, we currently have a garden teacher who, it's already inequitable what can happen because she's already at fire school, so this would allow for some equity. So it's not exactly following, she already does some there, but it would allow for more equity because we already can, if that makes sense.
So would that's the only one that's split between Mount View and the outlying schools, is just, would you need a position and a half of art or a position and a half of PE?
That's some of the detail we still have to sort out because we've got some funky stuff already going on, right? Like our art teacher, we already have an art teacher who only wanted to do 2 days. So there's so many little funky variables that it's really hard to sort of play that all out right now.
So do we get charged for that in our part of the assessment? Do we, because say, I know you don't want to use specific people, but say a PE position that's here, and then, so we're getting that amount charged to our part of the assessment.
Right, the little
That
part that would be
position,
specific to
yeah,
here.
the 1/4 or whatever. If that position followed to Mount View, then it wouldn't necessarily be a savings, so.
So for example, I think this is what you're asking, the counselor, for example, we didn't assess any of that, even though the counselor is here,
Right.
we didn't assess any of that here because we have such a need in the district, we would need that counselor no
Exactly.
matter what. So none of that was assessed to the town here.
Right.
Does that help make sense?
Yeah,
Only,
so-
only the part that we would no longer need would be assessed, is in those numbers. Am I explaining that right, Barb?
So the other piece I could add is between the two schools, there would be a continued district funding of 6.3 positions. As Alicia laid out, she's looking at needing 5 classroom teachers.
Right.
So the district is already looking to cover more than the 5 to make sure we can have those itinerants continue the support services. It just may not be 100% of what's needed in all the separate buildings right now. But that's a big difference where between the two schools, it's 6.3, but she needs 5.
Right. I get confused where, if we're getting charged, or, that part of the assessment's coming to us for 1/4 of a PE teacher, and that's gonna go with.
I'm gonna stop this discussion now because you're asking, we don't know what's happening in Liberty yet. And so there's so many variables. And we already know that teachers roll over. I mean, what we had, 4 or 5 art teachers in the last 6 years. So we know there's a ton of rollover, especially in these outlying schools. So we need to leave it there. If we want more specifics, we can talk. Once after December 10th, we'll know more.
Is there anywhere online that lays out the actual lines of like what the 3.2 teachers are? Is there anywhere I can go look later? No?
Okay, one last question.
I'd like to know, we have phys ed at Morse Memorial School, and how many days a week do we have phys ed at Morse? One?
Well,
And my child at Morse would have a period, one day with the phys ed teacher, right?
I'm sorry, one period a week for PE, is that what you're asking?
I got a child in 5th grade.
Yep.
Okay? And phys ed is here one day. My child would be in phys ed one day a week.
Well, phys ed is here 2 days, but because it takes more than 1 day to get through all of the classes, but the child would have.
All right. So when my child goes to Mount View, they're going to have that same amount of instruction in PE. Pardon?
Yes.
Okay. And it'd be the same with that, same with music, same with anything else, right? Okay. So the teacher that's teaching here is going to go to Mount View and teach that child at Mount View, or somebody is. Somebody is, okay? So there's no savings. There's no savings in that teacher, and an amount of time that my child is getting instruction here is going to get the same Mount View, unless you have somebody at Mount View that has an open class that's getting paid for sitting and doing nothing. Somebody's got to physically go and teach that child. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Now, equivalent teachers, okay? You have 5 full-time teachers here, classroom teachers. And there's 2 in Liberty. And I thought I heard somebody say that you're going to have 5 additional classrooms. Pardon?
3 teachers in Liberty.
You have how many teachers?
3.
3? Excuse me. I stand corrected. You have 8 in all, okay? So 5 of them are going to go to Mount View to teach separate classrooms. So you have in the both Liberty and Liberty and Morse, you've got 3 teachers that will be positions eliminated. I don't care who they are, okay? So you don't have the 3.2 that you're saying you're gonna save here now. And you're looking at both schools.
Right, and some of it is itinerant. Is that money, if you correct me, some of that is itinerant for the library.
Pardon? Are you?
Some of that is itinerants, which make up another, like Barbara said, 0.4 of this and 1.5 of that, because it all makes up what seemed like another full person. Right.
But, no, you know, I'm talking about my child getting the same amount of instruction, okay? You're telling me that is, somebody has to teach that child. So you're not eliminating all the positions you're talking about in this thing. What went into the Department of Education with that number of teachers, you cannot support that today. Okay? I'll let it go at that, okay? That's a difference of opinion, no problem. Okay, I've had difference of opinion all my life and still have lived 75 years, and probably not anymore, but that's okay. Now the next thing is budget, okay? We got a $22 million budget, round numbers, whatever it is. So when you start operating your new budget for the next year, this school is closed and Walker is closed, there's almost $1 million, round numbers, 579 and 400, so pretty close, okay? So you're going to start at a $21 million budget. So when you start in and you come to us and say, we don't need an increase because we've saved $1 million, I'll want to see that. Okay?
Except this is based off of the.
No. I understand it's based on you, but that's minimal. We're talking $1 million. I'm talking about starting and stopping. Okay? You're telling me I'm going to save $579,000 by shutting this building down. That's what you're telling me. So I want to see it in the scheme of things when you start that budget process. You can add in the increase if you'd like for this year in another line, but I want to see that up here, that you've actually started $1 million less.
Woo!
Thank you.
That's right.
Okay, public hearing is closed.
Oh, you're going to just shut it down and not ask anybody else?
I have a motion for adjournment.
Yeah, you
So moved.
move to adjourn.
Second. Favor? So, can I ask, board, hang around